Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness. I want to just go into a little flow with the guides and kind of see where they have to go with some of the messages or energies that we are in the process of recognizing. So many things I could go into, hand mudras, sounds. I'm going to do a little sound to start. This helps me to tune in, to shift my frequency. It's like turning the dial on a knob when you're listening to the radio. Shuku and a little light language. Wake shika inehe kaihe wahe ush ineke. This is meant to be felt, not necessarily understood on a linear basis. Shuye ayin hip akai shikuyehene bikai di at ishukuyene. Shu yariaka nehekai iguashine. And while some are still skeptical of what this type of language holds, for they are not necessarily in tune with this particular tune. And we would invite you to tune into your own tunes, your own differences and coordinates, if you will, in your own tuning scale, your own harmonic adjustments. For as you listen into this particular tune, you may find certain feelings come up based on the language interpretation. But we invite all those who are unsure of these types of linguistics to let go of the need to interpret the pattern and merely reorganize in your own way, your own set of diagnostics, if you will, your own ability to play with the frequency and let go of the need to really interpret the identification and identity of these particular linguistic, I'm hearing languicular, there's just different plays on words I'm hearing, types of information. For behind the language is the information. Think of it as a packet, a zip file, if you will, a packet of harmonics that is inclusive, that holds a certain frequency pattern that when played with or just taken in or received, allows the body to respond, and the ability to weave with these harmonics becomes easy. It becomes I'm hearing a need to know basis. Like, we don't need to know. It's just a matter of letting go and allowing the feelings to move through the body to make the adjustments. Even if those feelings are confusion, even if those feelings are a sense of, this is weird. Yeah. For there is much to be confused about when we are trapped in our heads, if you will. There is much to be withheld when we hold back, when we look at things with a less open scale, if you will. And I'm being shown that it's a scale like right and wrong. I'm seeing Libra. I'm seeing liberate. Libra, liberate. And what I'm seeing is when we're looking at something like, well, that's not normal. I don't know. I don't understand that. Therefore, it's not normal. Recognizing that for some people, it's very normal. What is normal anyways? But it's just, my guides are just trying to get us to play with sound a little bit and let go of the need to fully interpret the language. It's like when we listen to someone speaking, let's say we're English speaking only, and we listen to someone speaking Portuguese. It sounds like something we don't understand, but we can feel into what they're saying. We can feel the words and we feel that person. So that's basically what they're trying to share in this light language and sharing. And we ask to essentially zoom in right now on the body, the human body in the skin suit. For many of us are recognizing we are going through a reorganization, and I am no different than and by the way, I say we, I'm tuning into a collective of frequencies and energies that are from different dimensions because we are non-dimensional, so to speak. We don't necessarily only exist in one dimension. We can tune into higher frequencies of different dimensions and transmit them through this body because this is inherently part of who we are, what we have access to. So we are accessing many different components that are inside of the body. And when we allow the transcriptions to reverberate through us, we shift in the way our transcriptors supply the information. We shift in the way which our DNA exchanges information, and we enhance our chemical frequencies, or the frequencies that move through our bodies, or the chemical understanding, if you will, that leads us to different conjunction points, junction points. We conjunct up, we move up and in and through our own life review in the now. I'm being called to come back and play with this later. So, life review of the now. I get caught up. We begin to let go of certain patterns and renew other patterns. We begin to see things from a different view, a different angle, a wider angle, if you will. We are able to collect this data from different data point insurgences, and we are able to restore certain surges that were defaulted before, and I'm hearing that's a play on words. We are able to then access the information that is stored within us, within these packets and pockets of frequency and grand design, that is chemically aligned with this new storage system. We begin to adapt to the frequencies and blend and merge with the new frequencies, allowing the old frequencies to be immersed, if you will, within the new frequencies. As we combine this electrical chemistry, we begin to change the way in which we influence this chemistry. We begin to shift and change how we influence this chemistry. We begin to change and influence how chemistry is changed and influenced, for we become creators in real time. We begin to blend, merge, and blur the lines of that versus this, or us versus them, or when, past and present and future circumstances. We begin to bleed through, if you will. I'm seeing when ink gets on a piece of paper and it kind of dyes the paper and then it becomes one with the paper. We begin to settle in to this new sense of individuality. And this creates a new version of reality in oneness. We begin to unify with different parts of ourselves, different aspects of the whole, and we begin to fill the gaps or fill the holes of incompleteness, if you will, the holes of not feeling as if we belong, the senses of feeling lost. And while there are times we will still feel lost in this new transmission of energies, for we are still transmitting with the old codes, if you will, as we reassess, access, and merge with the new codes, this will become less and less frequent if we can allow ourselves to shift to the dynamic frequencies that are available currently at our disposal. We begin to let go of, I'm hearing the garbage, and that's a play on words. That's a big play on words. And I'm hearing the garbage disposal, right? The garbage disposal, we chomp everything up, we flush it out, and we start fresh. But I'm being called to play with that. Okay. So fun. It comes back to sifting. And I had done some videos prior to this that involved us sifting out. I'm hearing sifting out the contracts. And so we're going to play with that for a moment. So I'm on Edom Online. I love playing with this. There's certain words that stand out when I'm doing these presentations or transmissions, and I'll see the word is bigger, or the word will come through louder, or they'll repeat the word. I'll repeat the word 3 times or something. And so let's play with this. To sieve, to S-I-E-V-E. And I love the fact because they used it to inspect and remove the dirt from spices. And of course, that leads me to spice, which is gold. And that's a whole other spin. But it's being to sift out. And I want to play with this too. And I'm also being called to keep playing with this. And garble is part of the origination of this word, is one who mixes up or mutilates words or language, which some that listen to this may think that's me. I'm such a garbler. But in actuality, what the guides are kind of sharing is we're pulling this out. And this has a lot to do with what we've been told. what we've told ourselves. And if you look at the etymology of certain words, a lot of our words have been hijacked. That's what they're sharing. They're saying a lot of our words have been hijacked, and the actual definition of the word has been reassociated with something it isn't. It's been like it's been an add-on. So oftentimes I will use a word not in the context that it was originally designed, because the guides are like, what's a word? What is language? And if we're watching what's happening around us, in case you guys haven't noticed, there is a lot of garbage being spoken, words that don't quite add up with the intention behind the words. And I'm hearing the etymology. It isn't the original of the word. The definitions of what people are stating do not fit or are not in alignment with the origination of that syntax, is what I'm hearing. So what happens is, as we're doing this within ourselves, the guides are showing me, like, part of what I'm here to do is to share how that is done and how we can interpret the garble and feel the definition behind what's being said. That's just a bunch of nonsensical language extraction. Sorry, my earpiece is falling out. Let me fix this. Okay. So I know you guys might be following along with what I'm referring to, or what the guides are referring to. Like, look at what's being said on television. Look at what's being written. And sometimes we're reading this stuff going, is it just me? Am I crazy, or does this not make any sense? And so we're really being called, and there are some people that are just nodding their heads in unison, acting as if they understand what's being said, but they're not really fully listening. And that's actually one of the things that I've been called to share recently. I have my dear friend Candace is very into gene keys. And one of the gene keys she's been sharing with me recently is 13. And it's this concept of really listening, hearing the sound behind the sound, which it's such a big deal, because oftentimes we get to a point where we want to advance our intuition, or we want to, I get asked a lot, well, how do I listen? And it's not just listening to the garble and the words and just saying, okay, that must be what it is. It's feeling what's being said. It's playing with the words. It's recognizing the patterns and the repetitiveness of certain dialogues, or and that's basically what they're saying. So there's a lot that goes into it, even though it's very simple. And what they're showing me is we are currently sifting through, and I'm hearing the grains of sand, but that's a play on words too, because a grain also has to do with the wheat and the chaff, right? We're separating what's useful and composting and getting rid of what's not. This also has to do with spice and gold. This has to do with we're allowing ourselves, it says mix up, confuse, or distort language. So if we're listening to people telling us or educating us on this is the way of reality, but they're using words that are full of distorted chemistry, is what I'm hearing. Boy, this is actually kind of esoteric and quantum. If we look back to casting a spell, if we look back to ritual and ceremony, if we look back to the origination of some of the words and the inversion of the words, some of you will understand what has happened to our language over the years. And I'm being called, there was this movie, but anyways, like, bad is good and good is bad, and so on and so forth. So maybe getting out of this distortion and just coming back to the purity of the energy behind the words. And so I'm hearing the original spin. So let me kind of go back to this. I'm seeing a reference right now to cribellum, which reminds me of cerebellum. Here we go. I just got lost down the rabbit hole, or should I say the spider web here of this wordology. So I want to try to keep it simple, but I'm being called to go back and forth and weave it together like a spider. So we're in this energy. I've had this energy spider has been coming up a lot in my reality. What are we weaving? And essentially, what we have woven, the web that we have been woven within our reality, is leaking. And I'm in flow right now. So what that means is that energy has been funneled. And this is going to be one perspective from a, let's say, a lower vibration perspective, even though it's a quantum perspective too. When I say lower vibration, let's say 3D. So from a 3D perspective, we wove this web of reality, which we all did this together. And there were certain beings who distorted that reality. Well, let's say other spiders that were weaving with us. And their funnels became thicker. They became more dense. And many people were pulled into those funnels under the impression that they were in their own web, but they were actually caught in another web, if that makes sense. And so we're in the process of removing those distortions. And it's interesting because it led me to Cribella, because that was the word that they used in garbage. So garbling, and it talked about cribellum. So in a sieve, and let's play with this for a moment. A sieve, if I'm pronouncing that right, is a strainer. And it's interesting because this is a very multidimensional way of explaining reality. So I'm just going to invite you guys to be open and play with this. So a strainer, a simple instrument for separating the finer from the coarser parts of disintegrated matter by shaking it so as to force the former through holes or meshes too small for the latter to pass. So what they're showing me, this is why they're trying to get my attention, to show me what's happening on a bigger level with this wordplay. Now, in that definition, if you look up the word disintegrated, it's separate into component parts or destroy the cohesion of. To break apart, separate into its component parts. So disintegrate, right? To fall apart, but to separate. So what they're showing me is, by playing with these words, they're giving me a diagram to kind of play with. And essentially, if you picture reality as this giant web and you have all these funnels going on into different sections, in actuality, what that's done is it's distracted us. It's pulled us into design of someone else's schematic, even though we're all designing this together. But we thought we were still designing our own web, and we were. And I'm being called to draw this, you guys. This is funny. Okay. So let's say this was reality, this big bubble, this big circle, and pretend that's a giant web. So it's a beautiful web with all these grand designs. And within that web, another funnel of webs were created. And so that was the grand schematic. And then you had this other funnel, let's say, that was created. And I know some of you guys know what I'm talking about already, but I'm just being shown too. So let's say this other funnel web was created and it was off to the side. So it was still within the subset. It was still within the bubble. There were good creations in it and some distortions within it. And so what happened was we have all these little spiders, right? I'm going to create all these little spiders. Whoop. And some of them, and let's say there's a bigger spider up here, and it's not bigger because it's more powerful, or we gave our power to it essentially, which made it more powerful. So you got that big spider up there creating that web, and you got all the little spiders that are us in this other web. Now granted, there's a bigger spider that has the entire web of creation, right? So now there's these other shoots or offsets of webs within that web, okay? My awesome artwork. And now there's little spiders are in here, thinking they're in here. They are, because it's all encapsulated within the same network, theoretically. But in actuality, they're creating under this subweb, this subset. That's what's been happening for a lot of people in reality. So all these spiders over here are not necessarily connected to this massive web. But because this web became so big, we all, to a certain extent, got pulled into it, right? Or from one perspective. From another perspective, not necessarily, but I'm just playing with this storyline, okay? So now what's happened is, and that was pulling energy out into trying to create this into another reality, let's say. But we're at a stage from my perspective right now where this bigger reality is dissolving this. It's dissolving this. So what's happening is this spider is still trying to create this, but it's getting sucked into this other web, right? And I could have drawn that a little bit better with the funnels in pink over here. So it gives this idea of distortion and separation, but they're really one. So now this is being pulled and dissolved. So this is getting, and that we could say from one perspective might go into another reality entirely, right? It might still keep on creating, but this one that we're choosing to incorporate into a higher dimensional field is no longer going to allow, because of, I don't know, quantum physics or our decisions or our choice, this to continue in the same way. So maybe it's going to go into a different version of reality and continue over there for the people or the spiders that are so encapsulated within that funnel, or maybe they're choosing that reality. But this is beginning to be absorbed and reintegrated. And what they're playing with is the word garbage. So the garble, or the words that created this reality that are back words that were taking us back into a loop, a time loop, a pattern, right? Keeping us with this idea of, or concepts of survival, fear, right? I could have done a much better job at drawing that. Maybe I'll draw it later, but that is slowly being disintegrated. And that's a play on words too, because the irony in it was that web, that funnel was originally created to disintegrate the other one, the light one, to be inverted, if you will. And what that means, essentially, if you play with that, is it is to destroy the cohesion of. So it's entropy, right? So one is neg entropy, one is entropy. So it was created to, what is that rule that they say, separate? Gotta keep them separated. Like if we have this idea of separation and we're each creating these individual webs inside of this funnel, we don't realize that we're being separated from the bigger, beautiful web, right? We think that this is all we live in. We think that that web right there is all there is, or we think that that's all there is, when in actuality, that's held and encapsulated within life, light, whatever it is. We just are being told that it's not. The garbage, the words, the spell casting, all of this stuff. Okay. So what I'm being shown is this moves us back into integration, which means it's whole, right? To bring together the parts of. So essentially part of what we're doing is we're pulling all of this stuff from that web and we're bringing it back into and weaving with it. So this is dissolving, but we're also pulling some of that and integrating even this, the distortions, so that we can look at it and see it and go, wow, okay, I'm going to hug that with compassion. I'm going to hold that with non-judgment. I'm going to recognize that from a place of love and recognizing that this was all connected the whole time, even though it gave a false sense of separation, while simultaneously giving some people a false sense of security or the need to feel secure within that dark and tangled web. Does that make sense? Boy, this is, I didn't plan on going here today, but apparently this is where we're going. So one of the things I'm being shown is I'm hearing cast aside the grievances. So this is a play on words. Let go, because grievances are associated with this, not this. And all of this is part of the bigger whole web of life, of unity, of sound, of frequency. So, and that's if we want to co-create in this beautiful web of light. And there's going to be some shadows that are with it that have accumulated. And I'm hearing let the dust settle. So, the other thing that I'm being called to talk about is integer. So to make whole, this has to do with physics, quantum physics. It has to do with, it's saying untainted, upright, and literally untouched. That's integrate. So it's pure. It's purifying the energies that have been, essentially, I'm hearing adhered to. So we were stuck. I'm seeing sticky tape with all of this webbing that was attached to words that were creating disintegration, lack of cohesiveness, non-coherence, right? And we know what some of those words are. I'm also being called to continue to play with this. So I'm on sieve, and I'm going back to garbage, which led me to cribellum, sieve, and cribum. Now the irony in this, you guys, is cribellum is actually, or cribum, is Latin for sieve. But if you look up cribellum, I only looked it up because it reminded me of cerebellum a little bit, the whole bellum, which I'm sure has a bigger meaning. It led me to spider. It led me to web. And I want to read this briefly, and I'm going to show you a picture. So I feel like this is relevant. Now, everything I'm talking about also has to do with the human body. So this is happening inside of us. We're going through the guides referred to in the earlier portion of this video, life review. So essentially, we're reviewing our life in real time. When you pass on to the other side, a lot of people who've had near-death experiences talk about this. In fact, almost everyone who's had an NDE talks about having a life review when they pass over to that other side. And they're able to see everything they've done in their lives and feel how that has affected the people in their lives. And what I'm being shown is that's happening for a lot of people now. How many of us are starting to see what we've created? We're starting to feel and become more compassionate because we feel inside of us what we've done. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. I'm being called to really reiterate. All of this is for a greater expansion. It isn't a negative of, oh no, we're going to go through a life review and I'm going to learn about all the things I've done wrong. It's not wrong or right in that regard. It's playing with that word too. Here we go. It's actually the vibration that we're balancing in. We begin to let go of the distortions. We can see as we have a life review, some of the belief systems that I'm hearing tattooed on us, that we've worn as part of our story, our sieve, our sleeve. And in actuality, those aren't necessarily part of who we really are from the greater perspective, from the greater whole. When you pass on to the other side, you take with you all that stuff, but you let go of whatever it is that you aren't truly, that you don't need. Does that make sense? You don't take it with you. Let me rephrase that. I'm being shown that I could say that better. You are still you're still your essence of Joe, Anna, Carrie. You still take that with you. But you're not necessarily taking with you all of the beliefs that the ego or the that held with it. So if we believed we were unworthy our whole lives, or we believe we were a bad person, but then we get to the other side and they show us all of these amazing things that we really did to make people feel better, in addition to all the things we did that didn't make people feel good, we see things from a different perspective. We're able to hold a different vantage point, and we're able to then let go of our judgments around ourselves. So this is happening internally, and this is being reflected outside of us. So some of us are really feeling judgy right now, and we're being gifted an opportunity to see where we've judged ourselves, where we're judging our family members, where we're judged. So that's the life review. And I'm just using that as one example. I could probably do a whole video on that. So I forgot the word already that they were having me play with. Okay, I have to laugh because I didn't realize regard had anything to do with judgment. I was just talking about judgment. And regard is usually when I think of regard, I think of it as I'm looking at something, I'm taking it into consideration. Well, it's also a judgment. So I'm probably going to go back to this video and give a recap and break it down a little bit. So we're taking notice of, okay? We're recognizing what we're judging. We're taking it into consideration while we get these life reviews, but we're not doing it from a judgy entanglement, because that is the old way. Judgment, this is more, I'm regarding it, I'm witnessing it, I'm seeing it, and in doing that, we actually dissolve it, we integrate it, we bring it back into wholeness and oneness from a place of disintegration. We bring it back into integration. We're no longer separate from that which we are. We're no longer separate from that which we are, but we're no longer separate from that which we thought we weren't. We take it all in and say, I did that thing, but that's not really who I am. And that actually brings us back into a greater sense of wholeness. So we're not identifying as that judgment. We're not identifying as that person who did these deeds that made us feel as if we weren't good enough or others weren't good enough. But we're witnessing it, we're recognizing it, we're looking at it, and we're seeing it, which gives us the ability to not be just ensnared in this web in which we don't realize there's a bigger web outside of that. And then we begin to dissolve that and move into or bridge together and weave together with this new understanding and therefore this new reality. And therefore, because this is happening at a chemical level, when we look at something and we become aware of it, it shifts our chemistry in our body. When we come back out of disintegration or lack of coherence or negentropy, and we move into entropy, we move into negentropy. It just sounds like it should be the opposite. We move into a place of cohesion with ourselves, and we pull back those pieces of us that we've denied, or we allow and accept parts and pieces of others that we've denied. And we start to come into a higher range of acceptance and frequency adjustments that give us a higher range or ability to weave at a higher disbursement portal. And that's a play on words, so I'll have to come back to that. I also want to take a peek at, it also says respect, esteem, feeling kindly, from a consideration of esteemable qualities. So it's not all negative. And that's the noun, right? That's, so let me play with that for just a moment. It also says to have or show certain feelings for. So this is another key ingredient here. When we were in this other web of energy and we were weaving underneath this reality that was full of spells and beliefs and all of the structure that we thought that was what we were existing within. We thought those were our being shown to. Back to this, I kind of messed up the picture, but we thought that this was all we had. But really, we have all of this. We have both, right? We don't just have this. We don't just have that. We have all of it. If we're one of those little spiders that's in here, trapped in our own web, in our own spell, that might have been guided by this big spider up here, but it doesn't matter. We still made the choice, right? So now we're actually feeling something about that. We might be feeling grief at that acknowledgement. We might be feeling all these things, but that's part of why this is happening now, so that we can feel all of these things and broaden our scope, our range of feelings. Because sometimes when we're in a place of fear, I'm going to give that as an example, we aren't able to feel anything but fear, or fear becomes our filter through which that funnel, right, that we feel everything else through. It becomes our perceptive lens that we see everything else through. Therefore, we not only perceive through fear, we receive through fear because it has to go through that filter first. And we then project and create our reality through fear. And that is that funnel or that 3D, not all of it, but a huge portion of many who have been filtering their reality through that frequency. And that's something we're starting to dissolve, recognize, regard, look at, integrate, disintegrate, to move away from out into a bigger field of feelings, reality, perception, so on and so forth. This shifts our direction, what we're focusing on, and it also changes the frequency, therefore the chemistry in our body, and renews all of our, I'm hearing light signals. So this has to do with our system as electricity, as proteins and ions, and this exchange of information, and all of this begins to make massive quantum leaps. So I'm going to come just to Cribble for just a minute. And it led me to Cribbolate, which is so fun. So we're going to play with this. It's talking about 2 ways in which spiders have evolved to improve the efficiency of prey capture with their webs. So let's talk about this. Tens of millions of years before the and I'm on HEBETS lab. I'll share the profile. Let me just share screen actually. So let me play with this for just a minute. Okay, so Hebet's lab. So to learn about, so tens of millions of years before the orb web evolved, spiders used major ampulate silk in various forms. The first webs were horizontal and were not orbs. So this is play on words, you guys. So we're playing with this. The guides are using this to share with us how we've been creating. We've been creating in a linear, horizontal format, or thinking that we have been. We'll put it that way. Currently, scientists believe the orb web evolved only once, and I'd love to play with that more, but we'll come back to this. Cribbolate silk is produced from numerous tiny silky glands underneath a specialized spinning organ called the cribellum. Now, this is a play with us, so I'm going to come back to this. This has to do with our own spin density is what I'm hearing. They're using spider as an example, and I think there's something going on with spider actually within the gene keys right now, I'm pretty sure. The cribellum is derived from spinnerets, the anterior median spinnerets, and its surface is covered by hundreds of thousand tiny elongate spigots, which each produces an extremely thin single fibril of silk. All spigots act together to produce a single cribbolate thread made up of thousands of silk fibrils. Now, I love this because it's all spigots act together to produce a single thread, but it's made up of thousands of silk fibrils. So it's talking about, the combination, let's go, talks about spider species. Okay, that was really all I wanted to read. So let me stop share. So I just see this as I wanted to share the picture. That's what it was. Bear with me. So this is all I want to share right here on the left, or I don't know if it's on the right for you, but you see this orb web, and then to the right you see the platelets and the different shape that is formed. And I feel like this is relevant, and I'll probably come back to this later. Okay. So I really got pulled down the funnel web on that one. But so essentially I got pulled into as within, so without. And, the guides keep referencing that while this is a reference to, the spider web and the matrix and the way in which we weave our reality, and, the natives and indigenous people speak about Mother Spider being the weaver of our reality, the web. We call the internet the web, the World Wide Web. So there's lots of references to this. And words generally have, there's a base meaning at the core of these words, if it hasn't been completely mutilated, so to speak. But this led me to looking up was I was fascinated by this cribellum topic and spiders weaving this web. And what's interesting is we have these bacteria throughout our whole body, and the human body has diatoms. So humans have small amounts of silica in their body tissues, and it's normal to find silicon dioxide in urine. And it talks about having this in our body. Now, diatoms, which I probably could go into flow on this as well, have this connection to this cribellum, which has a connection to weaving and spider. And if you think of the fascia in the body, even our fascia and our connective tissue looks like a web. So everything is connected, right? And all of this is a reference. What we see outside of us, we can look within oftentimes and kind of play with us. It also talks about diams produce 20 to 30% of the air that we breathe. Through carbon fixation, diatoms remove carbon dioxide from the air. So this could be a whole other topic to kind of play with. And of course, it's found in marine algae and et cetera, et cetera. But it says it has cribellum pores. Ooh, boy, this is a fun flow for me, at least. So essentially, back to the spread here. One of the things they brought up was dispersion portal. I think that was the word I used. So what the guides are essentially is we're in this dispersion portal. And so we could look at this as a portal. We just went through, if you're on the more woo-woo side of things, which I know woo-woo is actually science, woohoo. But if we're looking at it from explaining it through unicorns and such, not that unicorns aren't real, they were my favorite animal growing up. But my point is, we recognize through astrology, right? Through, which some people still consider woo-woo. And I'm just bringing this all around into both, that we go through portals. We go through moments where they're funnels, and we are essentially linked up with different parts of our solar system that give us an ability to receive more information. We maybe get more planetary activation. There's more sounds coming from a certain planet that we happen to be in alignment with that quantumly offer a certain frequency that maybe wasn't fully accessible before because we were out of alignment with it. And that's one way of looking at it or describing it from my perspective. And our body has portals. We have portals within our system that open and close at certain times, and essentially everything's connected. So if we are under the belief system or structure that we are only within this certain portal, oftentimes it's our lack of being able to open and clean out the garbage, dispose of what doesn't serve us. I'm leaning it back to garbage. Sorry, I'm just having a reference to The Office. Do you guys ever watch The Office? I got you a cat, a feral cat. Its name is Garbage. Reference to Dwight. Anyways, so dispersion, right? And I'm going to read about this. So what they're saying is that's opening up. We're cleaning out the garbage if we can allow ourselves to recognize that's happening. And we start to see some of this stuff come up and we're like, ooh, I didn't know that was in there. If you guys have ever done a parasite cleanse, you might know what I'm referring to. Or a cleanse of any sort. Sometimes strange things happen in the body and we go, how did that happen? This is happening at a physical scale. Our physics of harmonics, our harmonic scale inside our body, and our availability of adaptivity. We are evolving, if you want to limit it to that one definition. So The guides are saying we're in a dispersion portal. So dispersion is the phenomena in which a wave's phase velocity, which we're going to talk about in a minute, depends on its frequency. It can occur at any type of wave, including sound waves, electromagnetic waves, water waves. In optics, dispersion is a property of light. You guys have seen the Pink Floyd dispersion with the pyramid and the rainbow going through it at a different angle, right? But the way that's not the definition. I'm just explaining the picture. It's a property of light and other electromagnetic waves and can be seen in the spectrum produced by a prism or in chromatic aberration of lenses. Dispersion can be caused by refraction, interaction with a tube. Now, I think this is also a play on words because a sieve is also, I'm seeing it as a type of tube. Tubule is what I'm hearing. For example, or the dispersion of electromagnetic radiation from outer space. Now that's also a key because we are in a portal of dispersion. That's even a play on words. So this can also be the dispersion of electromagnetic radiation from outer space. So as this happens, something happens within our body, within the earth, right? Our center of gravity, I'm in flow right now, our center of gravity shifts slightly to accommodate the frequency and pattern dispersion. For example, when white light passes through a glass prism, it splits into 7 constituent colors because each color has a unique refractive index and travels at a different speed in the prism. This causes the colors to bend through different angles inside the prism, separating them into a rainbow pattern. Red light is refracted the least, while violet light is refracted the most. It can also occur in sound waves, where higher frequency waves travel faster than lower frequency waves, causing the wave packets to spread out. Now notice, I just want to kind of, on a very basic level, there's no judgment around this. Some are higher frequency waves, they travel faster. Some are lower frequency waves and they travel lower. That doesn't mean that the sound is necessarily bad or good. It's just a different vibration of sound, a different oscillation or rate or speed. So part of what I'm being shown is we're changing our medium. And this has been like a flow that's been, my guides have been talking about for quite some time. I did several videos on this, the last couple videos. So we're changing the medium in which the light is refracted through. This is the Carrie definition. And so that means the spectrum is going to shift. How we perceive the colors is going to shift. The colors that are available for us to see and what's distorting those colors can also be seen or is felt. And they bend through different angles. So if you have blockages, let's say through the chakra system, that light is not going to be as bright or have as great of a speed or a higher sound frequency if it is unable to be, I'm hearing located. So I'll have to play with that a little bit. Okay, when I see location, I'm hearing tractor being I'm also seeing dolphins and whales and how the sound, right? If they are unable to send out the signal or it doesn't go as far, they're not able to see as far around them and they're not able to get the feedback of their location. I'm hearing the location transmitter is then shut down. So how do we apply that to us, right? Well, we're not able to read our environment or transcribe what's happening within our bodies, which is our environment, or the environment around us that is reflecting back to us. We're seeing, and again, I'm being shown the lens of fear as an example. So we are collaborating with the garbage rather than seeing through it because it's so much that's in our way that we're not able to see past that which is blocking or keeping us in disarray. And so I want to also kind of hone in on that because that was the word that the guides are playing with. So disarray is obviously, not being in order, right? So opposite of order, arrangement, or sequence. Now, this is important because what I'm being shown is this has essentially, from one perspective, can slow us down from all of the things we're talking about. Coming into alignment, advancing our DNA, growing in our awareness. And I'm being called to go back to the spider web. It kind of had a story about evolution that they said in the article that that spider ability to weave that orb had actually only happened once, but in a certain type of spider, they lost it a few times. Like they couldn't weave that web for whatever reason. So that to me was symbolic and stood out. So this has to do with, we've heard of the fall of civilization or the fall of man or the fall of whatever. And essentially what I'm being shown is that is the lack of cohesion. It's that lack of it's disarray. It's not seeing the full spectrum of the rainbow and only seeing one of the colors, and then even distorting that. So we're unable to then activate the sequence or the codons. We're unable to turn the codes on that we previously had access to in other, let's say, realities. And what I'm hearing is independability. So it wasn't dependable. We couldn't rely on those functions anymore because I'm hearing piss poor performance, play on words. Like we weren't able to perform at our highest standards because we were adapting to a lower module. And that means we weren't adapting. We were in survival mode. So what I'm hearing is this is breaking down. A lot of these core ordinates, demand centers, command centers are breaking down. And what are we looking at? Outside of us. Yeah, that's happening. But on an internal physical level, these coordinates are no longer cohesive. So this funnel of coordinates is no longer cohesive. It's starting to dissolve because of this bigger scale and harmonization, and also what's happening with our direct connection to some of the coordinates, the chords, the sound, the chords, the frequencies and vibration that we were I'm being shown veiled from. Like there was a shadow, we couldn't see them, the light couldn't be refracted to expand out all of the spectrum. It would only show part of the spectrum. We would only see part of the rainbow. I think this also has to do with lower chakra systems as well. We were only seeing maybe the yellow, orange, red spectrum, which represents the root, sacral, and solar plexus. What happened to the higher spectrums that are moving faster, such as the heart, the throat, the crown, and beyond all of that, because we have more than just that. Surprise, I had to do a quick outfit change. I had some phone calls and some things to do, so I'm coming back in this a little bit later, and I don't know how to add an end video, but I'm going to end on this note and just kind of share that we have an incredible amount of energy that's coursing through our bodies right now that's helping us to clear out this garbage or whatever we want to call it. And I am probably going to do a part 2 video on this to break this down a little bit, or maybe even redo this one to help align it better so people can follow it on a linear level. But we'll see what happens. What I can say is that there's so much happening at a grand scale energetically that my guides keep showing me that it's really important for us to not get caught up in this old web of our own making, of our own wording, of our own webbing, of our own energetic confusion, and begin to spin out from a positive way, centripetal, in our inner center. That energetic spin that allows us to spin from a more cohesive web and not spin out and get pulled into these other false realities that really don't hold the beautiful shapes of cohesiveness, of coherence, of that which we are, many of us are focusing on co creating for the new reality, unless that's where we want to be. If we want to stay in that old reality and we want to play with those, let's say, darker light from one perspective, right? Because it's all kind of this yin and yang, yin and yang. That's a choice. But we do have the choice to recognize that we have these beautiful patterns that are starting to emerge in the cosmos, in the earth, in the water, in our bodies. That once we begin to come back to a greater sense of completeness and wholeness within us, we can see this as we send it out into the world that is around us, that bubble, right, of reality. So I'll do maybe a part 2 on this and see where else this leads me down this path. In love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and just even making it to this part of the video and playing along with me. I'm very grateful for you, and thank you for liking and sharing these videos. I really appreciate it. Uh, I'm hearing just let's get the word out. That's a play on words, by the way. Play with words. Get out these old words of distortion. And what I'm hearing is play with language. Now, I'm also being called to remind everybody that we can think that this way of playing with words is also a distortion, but it's really actually utilizing the harmony and the frequency of the underlying beginning of the word rather than the focus of these limited, and I'm hearing, if I can say this, scatabulary. They're saying scattered vocabulary. And then what they're saying is a lot of the words have been scattered to create diversion. I'm hearing diversion tactics. And yet they're formulated in a cohesive sounding sentence, but that sentence doesn't really adhere to the frequency that the energy was originally bound from in a positive way, just if that makes sense. And this is something I'm learning along with everybody else. So thanks for playing. Namaste.